Leadership is about agility. In my younger life until now, I'm a martial artist. And one of the greatest martial artists and philosophers is Bruce Lee, with his art called Jide Kunedu. And he says that a leader must be agile like a martial artist, agile like water. If it is in a glass, it takes the shape of the glass. If it is in a bottle, it takes the shape of a bottle, but it doesn't change. It can be solid, it can be gas, it can be liquid, but it's still water. Leadership. A leader must have vision. You've got to see the big picture. Do we have such leaders? Whether it's in the political arena, you are typical African so-called leader. I don't use leader when I'm talking about African politicians, because it's an insult to the word. Their agenda is thinking from one election to the other. No big ideas. You go to China, see big thinking. The Chinese are now thinking about how they will relate to Africa 100 years from today. 100 years from today. None of us will be alive. None of them will be alive. That is why you go to any serious university in Africa now, they have a Confucius Institute. They are here to take charge of your mind so that you begin thinking like Chinese. They are teaching your children, you of the middle class, your children, you now tell them learn English and learn Mandarin. Because they are creating leaders in their own image. You know, when there was the conference in Sharm el-Sheikh, the COPs 27, Nigeria had the largest delegation with 486 or thereabouts, followed by Kenya with 386 for thereabouts. China had 193 or thereabouts. The United States 186 or thereabouts. Half of the individuals from Nigerian and Kenyan delegation were dead weight who were shopping in Sharm el-Sheikh. They had no idea what was happening. So when they come, they are now waiting for the conference in United Arab Emirates on 23rd to 25th November this year. Yet some individual in some ministry in this country authorized that they go. And all of them possibly were traveling business class. Those are not leaders. Those are thieves. And when you have such individuals controlling your affairs, you can't go far. We consume technology in a very primitive way without context. There is something called Ardi Sasa. Good. I started trying to enroll in it yesterday. I have not succeeded. Because they send me a pin. When I put it in, they say I'm too late and I've done it immediately. Now, what about my semi-literate mother and grandmother in rural Africa? How are they going to consume Ardi Sasa? Good on paper, but out of context. Every technology must be contextualized so that it has real meaning. Today, if you are borrowing money from a bank and you want to use that money quickly, registering a document in the land register in this country is a nightmare. And yet, you hear those in those sectors saying, we are ticking the box, we are now technologically savvy, we have heard this as a nonsense. If it doesn't work, it is complete nonsense. We should not be in the business of ticking boxes and feeling good. If you go to countries where these things are done, you can do it in the comfort of your sitting room. Let us consume technology in a manner that is within context. And you who are surveying, land is a very emotive issue. You know, you go to Kisumu, you go to Thika, you go to Kitengela, you go to Kilifi. See the many land conflicts that are there, double registration of land. How did that happen when you leaders were there? How? How did that happen when you have ethical standards within the survey and land valuation? How does it happen that a single piece of land is valued by 4 surveyors and one says it is 2 million, another one says it is 30 million, another one says it is 40 million? Is it voodoo or science? And we do this when the government is required to steal money through professionalism, you call it. Is that leadership? Leadership is about honesty. That is the point that I'm trying to make. That you are not a leader until you are honest. Leadership is about courage. And courage does not mean recklessness. It's about doing the right thing in a manner that is orderly. Are we courageous? Are you prepared to speak your mind without fear of consequence? He's lucky that you don't have the minister in charge here. If he was here, many of you here would be groveling, Mr. CS, Mr. CS. That's what we do in Africa. We see public officials and we go on a worship mode. And we don't tell them the truth. So somebody who is a CS, somebody who is a PS is being worshipped and you claim you are a leader? He's talking about the Kenya port, the port of Mombasa. The port of Mombasa is losing as we speak to Dar es Salaam, and he knows it. Losing to Dar es Salaam. Rwanda is preferring Dar es Salaam. Uganda is preferring Dar es Salaam. Eastern Congo is preferring Dar es Salaam. Burundi is preferring Dar es Salaam. Why? The question is, there's something that we are not doing. The leadership is not doing something. And the leadership must be told. And why should we be worried as Kenyans? Because if the port of Mombasa loses out to Dar es Salaam, it means that jobs will be lost here. It means that the cost of goods will be lost here. Right now, you know that the port of Berbera in Somaliland is being done. When the port of Berbera is finished, when Port Sudan is operating at full throttle, when Djibouti is operating at full throttle, when Beira is operating at full throttle, when Bagamoyo and Tanga is operating at full throttle, I fear for my port. I fear for my port and therefore my country. So one of the things that leadership in East Africa should be thinking about, and I know they are, because I've looked at their plan, is an integrated African approach, East African approach, so that there is no negative competition between Mombasa and Bagamoyo or any other port or the inland port that we are now doing in Kisumu, in Kindu Bay, in Fort Portal, in Mwanza, and all those. And all this is about leadership. Leadership is about foresight and intergenerational. When you are a leader, you don't think about today. The things that you are doing today, the fruits will be born long after you are gone. That is why it's always said that you are never successful until your successor succeeds. This is it. Leadership is about empathy, about building a team. I was telling some young men that one of the things that amazes me and annoys me at once is when African countries go for team sports. Right now, there is the women's football in New Zealand and Australia. And when African countries score a goal and lose, the newspapers in Africa report that African team has done very well. They scored a goal. But I thought people went there to win. When an African team reaches the quarterfinals of the World Cup, we say, oh great, for the first time an African team has reached the quarterfinal. You would think that the African teams were human beings playing with angels. What point am I trying to make? A good leader creates a team, a champion team. And a champion team will always beat a team of champions. A team of champions is a group of individuals who all have talent but are each playing for their personal glory. That is why in Africa you see Africans only do well in individual sports, not in team sports. Kukimbia tu hivi, wanashinda hivi. Kwa kuwa one man's glory, anakimbia kabisa, tunavunja marekodi kabisa. Lakini kuja kwa kandanda, basi. Kuja kwa kandanda, hatuko. Kuja kwa netball, hatuko. Kuja kwa mpira wa kikapu, hatuko. Team sport, hatuko. Why? Because we are not a champion team. A good leader must build a team where there is delegation without abdication. A good leader delegates but does not abdicate and says the buck stops with me. A good leader encourages those who are serving under him or her, does not feel threatened. A good leader has high self-esteem. Unaona mtu hivi? No self-esteem. When a worker is doing a good job, anakasirika. Anataka sifa hivi. Anataka asifiwe. Anataka wamwabudu. Hiyo si kiongozi. Hiyo ni mhuni tu. So, when we are in a forum such as this, and as I worry about this continent, Chinua Achebe, writing in his book, The Trouble with Nigeria in 1983, says something that applies across Africa. He says of Nigeria, and I dare say of Africa, the problem is simply and squarely one of leadership at all levels. At all levels. Any country you go to, and I visit all of them, most of them, I've visited 50 of them across this continent. Watu wanajiita viongozi hivi. When you hear what they are saying, watu wanapyora tu. Maneno machafu tu, viongozi. And they call themselves leaders. Somebody said that we are an agricultural country. Are we? When in my rural home we are eating fish from China next to the lake? Are we? When we are importing chicken feed from Brazil, are we? When the potatoes we are using at Kenchik, which is an American company we import from Egypt, are we agricultural? Are we? When we have no maize, we are importing maize from Brazil and the United States of America of the last 7 harvests, which is meant for cows. Are we agricultural? When we are still depending on rain-fed agriculture and we are waiting for little Israel to come and teach us how to irrigate, are we an agricultural country? Complete since 1963 with a Ministry of Agriculture? Leadership. Do we have leadership in health? When our leaders are sick, they are going to South Africa or Dubai or India. And we have been producing doctors since 1970. Are we? What is